The restaurant glowed with soft golden light. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above. Laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. Couples leaned close across polished tables, sharing stories and secrets. In the middle of it all sat Sophia Bennett, a woman whose presence demanded respect the moment she entered any room. She was the CEO of one of the fastest growing tech companies in the country, sharp-minded, elegant, and admired. Yet tonight her heart trembled with nerves. Her wheelchair rested by the table, the silver rims polished as neatly as her pearl earrings. She adjusted her napkin, checked the time again, and tried to calm the anxious flutter in her chest. It wasn't a business meeting. It wasn't a high-stakes deal. It was something far scarier, a blind date. For years, Sophia had poured herself into her work, telling herself she didn't need love, that her wheelchair was enough of a barrier. But her best friend had insisted, "Just one date, Sophia, you never know." So here she was, waiting, 5 minutes past 10. Her heart sank as each second ticked by. She sipped her water, forcing herself not to stare at the door. Then suddenly the door swung open. But instead of the well-dressed lawyer she was supposed to meet, in walked a man in greasy overalls, his hands rough, his boots heavy. He looked completely out of place in the elegant setting. He glanced around confused, until his eyes landed on Sophia. For some reason he walked straight toward her. Sophia?" he asked, scratching the back of his neck, her brows lifted. "Yes. I'm Ethan," he said. I think I'm your date." The whispers around them grew louder. Patrons exchanged curious glances, some stifling laughter at the sight of a glamorous woman in pearls and a mechanic in oil-stained clothes. Sophia blinked, stunned. Surely this was a mistake. Ethan quickly realized something was wrong. He looked down at his clothes, then at the room full of tuxedos and cocktail dresses. "Oh wow," he muttered, cheeks flushing. "I think I messed this up. My buddy set this up for me. Said I should meet a nice girl here tonight. I didn't know it was this kind of place." Sophia's first instinct was embarrassment. She could almost hear the whispers. Poor woman, even her date didn't show up right. She straightened her shoulders, ready to dismiss him politely, but then Ethan smiled. An awkward, genuine smile that somehow softened the sting of her disappointment. "Listen," he said, "I know I'm not who you were expecting. I can leave. But if you'd rather not sit alone, maybe I could just keep you company for a while." Sophia hesitated. A CEO didn't waste her time. A woman who had been stood up didn't sit with a stranger. And yet, something in his voice made her pause. "All right," she said quietly, "just dinner." Ethan grinned, pulled out a chair, and sat across from her. He clearly didn't belong in that restaurant, but the way he carried himself, relaxed and unpretentious, made it less uncomfortable than she expected. The first few minutes were awkward. Sophia spoke carefully, guarded, while Ethan rambled nervously about how he'd been fixing cars since he was 16. Then, unexpectedly, he made her laugh. When the waiter asked for their order, Ethan looked at the menu like it was written in another language. Do these fancy words just mean chicken and fish, or am I about to order something that stares back at me? He whispered loudly enough for her to hear. For the first time that evening, Sophia laughed, a real, unguarded laugh. And just like that, the ice began to melt. As the plates arrived, their conversation deepened. Sophia found herself speaking more honestly than she had in years. "You know," she said, setting down her fork, "most people look at me and only see the chair. Either they pity me, or they treat me like I'm fragile. It gets exhausting." Ethan leaned back, studying her carefully. "Funny, I don't see a chair. I see someone who's probably smarter than me by about 10 miles and could probably fire me without blinking." Sophia chuckled, shaking her head. "That's not the usual answer." Ethan's tone softened. "People always have opinions about what you've lost. I get that. I lost my business once. One bad year and I was broke. Everyone looked at me like I was some failure. But you know what? That's not who I was. And this," he gestured toward her wheelchair, "that's not who you are either." Sophia stared at him, stunned by the simplicity and power of his words. "You're not defined by what you've lost," he said quietly. "You're defined by what you refuse to give up." Her throat tightened. She had heard countless motivational speeches in boardrooms, but nothing had ever struck her heart quite like this mechanic's plain-spoken truth. For the first time in years, she felt truly seen, not as a CEO, not as a woman in a wheelchair, but simply as Sophia. Dinner ended and Ethan offered to walk her out. The night air was crisp, the city alive with neon lights and traffic. But as they reached the exit, disaster struck. The restaurant's front step was uneven, and Sophia's wheelchair caught against it. She tried again and again, panic rising in her chest. People around them stared, some whispering, some looking away. Her worst fear, being humiliated, was unfolding right before her. Before she could say anything, Ethan crouched beside her. "Hey," he said gently, "don't worry, I've got you." He didn't make a big show of it. He didn't fuss or draw attention. He simply steadied the chair, adjusted the wheels, and helped her glide smoothly over the step. When she muttered, "I'm sorry, this is embarrassing," he shook his head with an easy smile. "Embarrassing? Nah, you should see me try to dance at weddings. That's embarrassing." Sophia's tension broke into laughter. His kindness wasn't charity. It wasn't pity. It was respect, given freely and naturally. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. Maybe this blind date disaster wasn't a disaster at all. Maybe it was fate. Outside, they stood together beneath the streetlights. Sophia looked up at Ethan, her heart full of emotion she hadn't felt in years. "I don't usually do this," she admitted softly. "I don't let people in. It's easier that way." Ethan nodded. "Yeah, but easy doesn't always mean better." There was no kiss, no dramatic declaration, just something deeper. He looked into her eyes and said, "You don't need fixing, but if you'll let me, I'd love to stand by your side." Sophia blinked back tears, her chest tightening with hope. For the first time in a long time, she felt the possibility of love. Not the kind built on appearances or pity, but on truth. As he walked her to her car, she whispered to herself, maybe the wrong date was the right one all along. The story closes with a message. Life doesn't always give us what we expect. Sometimes it gives us something better. Love doesn't see wealth, power, or limits. It only sees the heart. Sophia had walked into that restaurant expecting disappointment, and Ethan had entered thinking he didn't belong. Yet, in one evening, fate brought together two souls who saw beyond appearances, beyond wealth, beyond circumstance. What began as a blind date disaster turned into a reminder that sometimes life's greatest gifts arrive in the most unexpected packages. Sophia discovered that love isn't about perfection or status. It's about being truly seen and respected. And Ethan reminded her that kindness offered without pity or expectation can change someone's world. The truth is, life will always surprise us. What looks like a mistake may be destiny in disguise, and sometimes the person who seems least likely to fit into our world is exactly the one we needed all along.